Yesterday, the world watched as Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin spoke for 2 hours. Was this just another diplomatic call, or are we witnessing a turning point in the Ukraine war? Background: Trump's return to power marked a major shift in U.S. foreign policy. Unlike Biden, who pushed for strong military support to Ukraine, Trump has emphasized avoiding foreign entanglements and focusing on domestic priorities. This has worried European allies, especially Kyiv, which relies on U.S. assistance to counter Russian aggression. With military aid already reduced and NATO facing uncertainty, Trump's direct conversation with Putin has raised serious questions about America's role in the conflict. What was discussed? Trump and Putin reportedly discussed a 30-day ceasefire aimed at halting attacks on Ukraine's energy and transport infrastructure. However, Putin set strict conditions. Ukraine must halt its mobilization efforts. The U.S. must stop military aid to Kyiv. Essentially, Russia wants to freeze the battlefield in a way that benefits its military position. Trump's reaction. After the call, Trump described it as productive, hinting that progress was made. He suggested that some elements of a peace deal were already in place. While a ceasefire could reduce immediate destruction, negotiating on Putin's terms might legitimize Russia's tactics and set a dangerous precedent. How did Ukraine react? Kyiv has remained cautious, as any decision made without Ukraine's involvement would be illegitimate. Ukrainian officials fear that a shift in U.S. policy could weaken their defensive capabilities, forcing them to seek alternative sources of military support. Russia's perspective. From Moscow's point of view, this phone call is a victory in itself. Putin has long sought to divide the West and weaken U.S. support for Ukraine. By engaging Trump in direct negotiations, he signals to his domestic audience that Russia is being taken seriously by the most powerful country in the world. State-controlled Russian media has already framed the conversation as proof that Ukraine's allies are growing tired of supporting Kyiv and that a shift in global power dynamics is underway. What's at stake? Beyond Ukraine, the outcome of these negotiations could set the stage for broader geopolitical realignments. If the U.S. takes a step back, China may feel emboldened in its ambitions toward Taiwan. Other regional conflicts could flare up as nations test the limits of Western resolve. Additionally, if the U.S. reduces support for Ukraine, will other Western nations fill the gap? Or will Kyiv be left to fight alone? The role of NATO. If Trump's administration moves toward a deal with Russia, the role of NATO becomes even more critical. Some European nations, particularly Poland and the Baltic states, have already increased their military spending, preparing for the worst-case scenario. There is also the question of whether NATO will remain as united without strong U.S. leadership. While France and Germany have advocated for greater European strategic autonomy, their ability to provide the same level of support as Washington remains uncertain. European concerns. European leaders are growing increasingly anxious. If the U.S. distances itself from the conflict, Europe will have to step up its support for Ukraine, or face a more assertive Russia at its borders. Some EU officials now argue that the continent must prepare for self-defense without relying on Washington. What's next? While this phone call hasn't changed the situation on the battlefield, it signals potential shifts in global strategy. Is Trump laying the groundwork for a major policy shift, or was this just a diplomatic test? One thing is certain, geopolitical tensions are escalating, and the world is watching closely. Do you think this is a step toward peace or a dangerous compromise? Let us know in the comments.